Hey there, it's Paul Kitchen, and it's July 1st. And on July 3rd, I have a new album coming out called Fighting Gravity. And it's got quite a backstory to it, and I thought maybe if I could explain it, it might make more sense. And there will be a making of post on my website in the next couple days. Okay, also explaining it, but I kind of like to explain things, kind of remember what actually did happen. You know what I mean? So anyway, I'm holding a CD uh, from way back when called Fighting Gravity, and I told this story on my podcast the other day that I was talking to my wife a while back, and she was up north and I was down south. And she said, I'm listening to this album you got up here in the CD player, and I really like it. And I go, well, what is it? And she said, Fighting Gravity. And I said, well, I never finished that. I never gave it to anybody. I never released it or anything. But I did work on it. And so the backstory is in 93, I released And We Dream. And on retrospect, that was probably a peak for me, a creative peak for me, and one of my better albums, I would guess. You'd have to ask other people, but I think it was a high point. I was definitely firing on all cylinders back then. And I was 35 compared to 65. And after that album, I started working on what would become this, Fighting Gravity. And this CD says 1999. But the album that came out after And We Dream was A Matter of Time, which came out around 2000. So the story is after And We Dream, I was working on Fighting Gravity tracks for the most part, and some A Matter of Time stuff. But at some point, I just abandoned this. I got a little frustrated with it. And I think I was frustrated really with the equipment and everything that was going on. I was changing equipment on how I was doing things and shifting from a 8-track reel-to-reel with time code and a PC, synchronized over to just a PC and recording audio, direct to disc on a PC, which I'd never done before. And it was a little change, and I was never real happy with what Fighting Gravity sounded like, in particular, I guess. And I ended up not finishing it and moving over to A Matter of Time. And but I always knew that I had some good songs there, and they've kind of been in my back pocket for 25 to 30 years now. And when I started transferring all my 8-track tape into Cubase in 2012, 13, and 14, and then later I figured out how to start playing along with that stuff and updating it and bringing it into the present, which I call retread. That kind of opened the door to, Fighting Gravity 2023. So when I look at this album here, there's 10 tracks on it, and 3 of them from '99, and 3 of them were released previously to now. Tragic Comedy is a cover and was on Magic Moon, which is not available currently, but will probably come back out again. And One Heartbeat at a Time and Crying are a couple songs. One Heartbeat at a Time ended up on A Matter of Time, different version, and Crying's been released in a couple versions through the years, recently on Tripnote. So anyway, in 2020, building on this retread thing, I did a whole album called Pot Shots from Over the Hill, where I actually brought in old tracks, played guitar, keyboard, new drums, bass, slide vocals, re-sang stuff, and ended up with a new album to me of old songs. Now this album coming out on Monday is unreleased songs. People have never heard these songs, and if I were to have recorded a new album in 2023 of from scratch, it wouldn't be anything like Fighting Gravity 2023, because I was a different guy back then, much younger, and different songs, So anyway, I hope you check it out. It's quite. I've worked on some of these songs off and on for 10 years. I have a whole list of what tracks were when they were started. So some of them were started in '93, the basic track, done in the eMagic Logic on the PC, and then around 2012, 2014, I brought them into Cubase and said, "Oh, can I figure this out?" And it actually took me quite a while on some of these tracks to figure out how to bring it into the present. A simple 8-track song, and some of which I remixed on Tripnote, is easy to remix it and play along with it, whatever. Something that had time code was damn near impossible, because I don't have a SMPTE timecode reader now. I tossed that thing that I had years ago, and I never could find a software application that could read the timecode for me. But basically, back in the day, I would push play on the 8-track tape, and my computer would start running, and that's how it would work. And I needed more tracks than 8, so those songs were, and actually. There was a MIDI component that I lost to some of the old stuff, but if I brought in 8 tracks into Cubase, and then I had some MIDI tracks, which were keyboards and drums for the most part, over in Logic, I would have to export that as MIDI. And then years later, when I was using the eMagic Logic on the PC, there's no tape, no time code, and I had to export that stuff as OVM files, which never used them before in any other capacity, and that's really the audio, and a MIDI file. So there was 2 files that I had to export out of Logic, and then bring them into Cubase and hope they synced up. And I'd go in actually to Logic and take a screen capture of the screen, because I actually could start the software still, and I actually could make it work. I lucked out and figured out how to make it work on Windows 10, all these years later, because it doesn't want to work in 2023. I mean, this stuff is 25 years old. And anyway, I did figure out how to start bringing some of those OVM MIDI files in. I have a mixer sitting behind me, my old Behringer Eurodesk, which is not a great mixer, but it was the mixer I had in 2000, 23 years ago. And I still have all the rack gear from then, all the MIDI rack gear that I had, my Roland rack and my Korg and my Proteus, and I actually got eMagic to communicate through that mixer to the MIDI gear, or through MIDI actually, but I was able to pull up all the original sounds from way back when as a starting point for today. And then I pretty much wiped all that stuff, but I figured out what I had back then, and I replaced it with modern day kind of stuff. And so pretty much there's a couple tracks on there where the old vocals made it through from all those years ago. Most of it's resung, all of it has new drums, guitars, most of it has new keys, some background vocals. Some of it has words that didn't exist way back when. So pretty much Fighting Gravity, coming out Monday. I hope you check it out. I'm really proud of it. I think it's one of my better works. I hope that it ends up being considered one of my better works. Who cares? But you know, if you don't like it, then you know, whatever. Join the club. But anyway, on Monday, Fighting Gravity. Check it out. Thank you.